How's everyone doing today? Adrian OTAP here, EPLURIBUSOTAP. Out of many, me. I am American, you can be too. Today is Friday, January 29th, 2021. We are days away from the new session of the Oklahoma State Legislature. And as ever, we're with our quality drinking vessel from our friends down the road at Big Boys Guns and Ammo. And today we are rocking the DD214 shirt that you can get from the guys at ASM DSS, awesome shit, my drill sergeant said, and AAF Nation, AmericanAsFuckNation.com. Both of those fine establishments can provide you with a DD214 shirt. Veterans, you know what this is all about. They say some people wear their hearts on their sleeves. Well, I wear my freedom papers on my chest now. I love this shirt, came in today. So, quick video. This shouldn't take very long. We're going to talk about, once again, it's come up, the Federal Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990, a little something written by then Senator from Delaware, Joseph R. Biden. He's the president of the United States now, apparently. So this is very, very pertinent information. So anyway, I received a phone call about 20, 30 minutes ago. One of my friends calling to get some clarification on something. He was like, hey, OTAP, I've got a question for you about that 1,000-foot distance, bubble around schools. Do you think that maybe we could get around it if in Oklahoma we had legislation where we did licensing for carrying long guns like we do with carrying handguns, so that people could be within 1,000 feet of a school with a rifle or a shotgun? And I corrected him at that point and explained that that would be completely unnecessary because the way the law is written, the GFSZA for short, it encompasses all firearms as an exemption if you have a handgun license or you are licensed to carry by the state that you are in and that the school is in. So here in Oklahoma, if you have a Oklahoma handgun license, one of these things right here, that exempts you from the provisions of this federal law so that you are able to be within, on public property within 1,000 feet of a school with firearms in your possession. It doesn't matter if it's a handgun, a long gun, a rifle, shotgun, whatever. You're exempt from that. Now, I need to touch on this other aspect of the law, which, it's one of those technicalities, and I'm all about technicalities. People like to bring up, well, didn't they rule it unconstitutional back in the 90s or something? Well, yes, there was basically a ruling to that effect. And if you ask me, the entire thing is unconstitutional, and the very concept behind it is terrible and unconstitutional. We should never even consider the prospect of banning guns on public property ever. But because of that, the law was amended and they changed the wording so that it only now applies to firearms that have moved in or otherwise affects interstate commerce. Well, that's pretty much any gun you're going to buy, unless you made it yourself or somebody that makes them at home, and they're not required to, they're not FFLs and they're not gun manufacturers, so to speak, and they're one-off items, or you're doing your 80% lowers or polymer 80 type situations. Things for personal use that you're not planning to sell, that you're not planning to have move across state lines, that sort of thing. But basically, the end result is that this law does by default, de facto, apply to virtually all firearms in the United States, and whatever dirt that is under U.S. jurisdiction if there's a school near it. And if you're out in the rural areas, not so much of a problem. But if you're living in larger cities, yeah, there's schools all over the place. And this is public schools, this is private schools, anything lower than the university level this applies to, and it applies even inside your car if you're just driving past the school without being licensed to carry by the state that the school is in. So your Oklahoma handgun license is not going to work in New Jersey or Nebraska or Texas or Idaho or Guam. So without that, you have to have your firearm unloaded and locked in a sealed container or locked to a gun rack when within that distance of school. So it can be prohibitive if you're not aware of it. And of course, let's think about the penalties for violating this law. This is federal law, therefore it's a federal offense if you break the law. Penalty, count them, 5 years in prison, $5,000 fine, and you become a lifetime prohibited person. In fact, it's interesting. The amendment, if you will, that made it apply only to those guns that are involved in interstate commerce came back in 1996. And if you go to even, I believe it's the Wikipedia entry for this particular law, you will find that there is a letter in there dated 2013 by our friends over at the Oklahoma Second Amendment Association. Then President Tim Gillespie, I believe he's also the founder of that organization. He wrote to the ATF, or BATFE, if you want to be formal about it, asking questions about this. And there's a copy of this letter, the response from the ATF on this, saying, yes, this is the law of the land. This applies. If somebody breaks this law, you're going to be in trouble. So with that being said, it's very interesting to look at some of the legislation that's coming up starting next week here in Oklahoma. Some of the legislation coming up in this current legislative session that, at the request of OK2A, in reality written by, and they find some legislator to put their name on it, revolving around school carry in schools, allowing private schools to allow people to carry, or public school, or if the school board gets together and comes up with some policy. So again, it's really peculiar that a lot of the provisions put into these bills we're going to be seeing in the next few weeks do not take this federal law into account. They're setting people up for failure. And hopefully through the committee process and through the amendment, floor amendments, amending things in committee, these issues will be addressed, because again, it's federal law. The feds can come in at any time and hit you with this. If you're a bad enough person, somebody wants you bad enough, local police, they'll stop you and they'll find federal charges, and they will let the feds know. So definitely some things to keep in mind. So big picture, bottom line on this is, it doesn't matter what type of firearm we're talking about. It's not just handguns. Just because you're in a state that does handgun licensing, or they have a concealed handgun license, or whatever they call it, it does not limit you to only handguns for the exemption to the federal law with respect to the proximity you can be within a school. It covers any type of firearm as long as you have a license issued by the state that the school is located in. There you have it. Have a great day. Looking forward to seeing people at the legislature. Even if you're not in Oklahoma, whatever states you live in, the Democrats, they've got the House, they have the Senate, basically. With 50-50 split, with the vice president being that deciding vote. Obviously, the presidency. So they're coming hard. Full court press attack on civil liberties, individual liberties. Well, they're not going to say they're attacking civil liberties, because they're all about diversity and inclusion and civil rights and all of that. At least that's what they say. But when you pull back the layers of the onion, it's easy and quick to understand that they are far from that by any stretch of the imagination. But what I'm getting at here is, whatever state you live in, get involved. It's going to be a fight. It's going to be an uphill battle, legislatively, in the courts, on the streets, winning in the court of public opinion, winning hearts and minds, swaying people to reason and reality, and understanding not just the intended consequences of some of these bills that are being pushed in legislatures across the country, but the unintended consequences as well. Words mean things, folks. That's why we have words for things. And when it comes to legislation and writing laws, sometimes certain words have specific legal definitions, and that has consequences as well. You'll see this in some of the legislation coming up this session. Instead of referring to persons or people, they'll make reference to patrons. Now, a patron, from a legal standpoint, has a very specific meaning, and it means something different than just a person, which can be anybody, any living human. You know, what's the thing? You know, people like to say, well, corporations are people too under the law. Well, again, you know, that's another thing to take into consideration. So when you look at it that way, you'll understand what's really happening and who these laws are meant to apply to and who they aren't applying to, who is actually excluded from them by default, simply because of the word usage, which is very, very deliberate in many cases. All right, we're going to stop now. This has gone on for about 10 minutes, a little bit longer than I thought. You know, the weenie dogs are going crazy. So get out there, fight for your rights, folks. Fight for your rights like your life depended on it, because ultimately it does. All right, E pluribus otap, out of many me. I am America, and you can be too. Have a great day, everyone.